Peace, peace. This your host, Selah, Shalom. And this is the Cosmon Teachings in the Words of Jehovah and His Angel Ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible, OAHSPE. And the topic of discussion today is called The Highways and the Heavens. Now, the same way we have highways and freeways on earth as a means of transportation to get to and fro, likewise is the heavens arranged with heavenly highways, which are used for angels to traverse the multi-universes. The same way we have vehicles on earth, likewise do the angels have vehicles in the higher heavens, as above, so below. Now, according to the timetables of prophecy, Etherian angels, at periods of 3,000 years, will come visit the earth and its heavens, making visible the spaceship for both mortals and angels belonging to the earth, to behold the glories of the higher heavens, which is a fearful sight to both mortals and angels belonging to the earth. And these events occur every 3,000 years. So the records are scarce. The last arc cycle was during the time which would have been the Exodus, or the time of the collapse of the Middle Kingdom entering into the New Kingdom. And when it talks about the chariot that followed the Israelites out of Egypt, which was a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day, they're referring to a ship, a spaceship, because that was the time when the Etherians was present during the last arc cycle, which was the 24th arc cycle after the creation of man. Now, in the book of Ashang, son of Jehovah, chapter 1, verse 18, it states, it talks about how the angels use the heavenly roadways. Verse 18, thus Ashang, well skilled in the course and behavior of worlds, gathered together his millions of angels, trained, arduous, enterprise, and furtherance of Jehovah's will. Quickly they framed and equipped an Orion, Port Ugan, basically that's the name of a craft, and illuminated it with firelights and bolts. And these sons and daughters embarked and sped forth 500,000 miles, even on the outskirts of Anakaran. That's a location in the Etherian heavens. And they stood close above the earth, almost so near that the sweeping moon could touch the down-hanging curtains of the Etherian fire. And here they halted, that both mortals and angels belonging to the earth might behold and fear. For such Jehovah made man by unusual sights to become weak and trembling, to change him to new purposes. See that? So here you see how the Etherians first transverse the universe, but when they come to a corporeal world, how the glory and the magnificence is so vast that it puts fear in the heart of mortals and angels, that it puts fear in the heart of mortals and angels. Now, in the book of Su, son of Jehovah, chapter 2, verse 7 through 10, it states, verse 7, Su said, in thy name, O Jehovah, and by virtue of thy power in me vested, my host shall forth at my command. Cut loose, ye gods, and thou, O ship of heaven born. To the red star, the earth, be gone. And Su stretched forth his hands, and waved them, and lo, the mighty ship of heaven turned on its axis, cutting loose from the high firmament, and it turned with its great curtains and banners, sailing gracefully and swiftly through the blue ether. Verse 8, the music of her Inurs, musicians, swelled and rolled along on the spheres of many worlds, unseen to mortals, where dwelt countless millions of spectators viewing the marvelous speed and power and brilliant colors of the great ship. Now look at that. They just said that these things are going on that is unseen to mortals. And in that unseen realm, you got spectators viewing as the ship coursed by. See that? So while we trying to fathom or get an understanding of what goes on in the afterworld, or in the life after death, or in the spirit world, here OAHSPE talk about it like it's nothing, like it's a common thing to know. Now, faster and faster she sped on, till near Shinvat, which is the border of the earth vortex, which now cut sharp in the fields and forests of Izaracha, sharp in the fields and forests of Izaracha, which is a locality in the Etherian heavens, over which was potent the name Su, the companion of God, and chiefest friend of Aph, Orion chief, son of Jehovah. Verse 9. When the ship came to the bridge and halted, the bridge referring to the border of the vortex, to take in the plain of the whirling earth, Su said, alight, ye gods. And at once, as high as the moon and bright as the sun, the illuminated ship stood to overwhelm the self-gods and warrior kings and murderers of the earthborn, whose plentiful souls in chaos polluted heaven. Verse 10. For 3 days and nights Su held his starship to the wonderful task of mastering by the marvelous scene, and then slowly he entered the vortex of the earth, but held his course, nor with the earth and her heavens, but he desired that both corporeans and atmospherians should witness the coming power. So slowly he came, but 50,000 miles a day, that when the ship neared the disorganized Hored, which is the heavenly kingdom, the self-gods and self-lords fled and left their well-supplied kingdoms desolate, and down to the earth rushed in thousands, and with their hosts in millions, to hide or safely stow themselves from the Agnes just hate. So here again it's talking about how when these Etherian angels descend down to the earth and its heaven, how grandeur their presence is, that it strikes fear in both mortals and angels. And here these self-gods, which are basically the false gods, when these events occur, they fled and leave their heavenly kingdom, leaving it desolate. The same way in the time of refuge, you would leave your house, grab what you got, and just leave, leaving everything desolate and in place. Likewise is the action of mortals and angels when these heavenly ships of fire or these heavenly boats or heavenly spacecraft descend down to the point where it's visible to mortal and angels, and it could be a fearful sight. Now, Book of Thor, son of Jehovah, chapter 1, verse 6, it states, Then call Thor for the swift messengers that coursed the firmament in the regions aperwith the roadway of the earth's past history. And the swift messengers came and laid their report before the throne of Jehovah, as to what world the earth was, and the harvest of the angels she had yielded up to the emancipated heavens. So here it talks about how these angels were able to read the past history due to the roadway the earth traveled. Now, Book of Thor, son of Jehovah, chapter 2, verse 3, it states, verse 3, God and his lords, being appraised of Thor's coming, had the capital in readiness for his reception, and they had beside gathered in all the angels of the second resurrection, and as many of the first as choose to come. In all there were in God, the name of the heavenly kingdom, assembled 900 million angels, faithful in Jehovah. Of these, not more than 1 million had ever seen an Etherian, nor had they visited outward from the earth further than the 7th plateau in Atmospheria. So when these Etherians come, receptions are held by the God of this earth and this heaven, and angels that are willing in the second and first resurrection are invited to bear witness to the event. So OAHSPE talk about these things as if they're regular occurrence. When in the Bible, if you was to see an event like this, people would think it's the end of the world when they hear about the heavenly ships descending. It's just seasons and cycles these things occur. Now in the book of Osiris, chapter 2, verse 9 and 10, it states, verse 9, Then Osiris left his high place, and with his hosts, aboard the Etherian ship of fire, sat out toward the earth at breakneck speed, for such was the disposition of this most determined God. Nor halted he at Shinvat, the boundary of the earth's vortex, but sped on with banners and curtains flying, and most martial music to stir up the souls of his hosts to sudden tittle. Verse 10, Down he came to the earth with his fire ship, and sped around about it, to learn its weak and salient points, and next rose up a little to view the atmospherian spirits who had presumed defiance toward the high heaven, in the place where God had been, whose God, a most holy one, had learned to rule by love for 800 years, and was unappreciated by the crude boasters, the unlearned jugers. There stood now castles and mansions of the false god, Utiah. Round him 1,000,000 of sentinels, armed for battle, were stationed to protect him, the false, and do his will. So here again you see how these Etherians use and transverse the cosmos to travel from point A to point B. Now, Book of Fragapati, son of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 10 through 15, and states, verse 10. Besides these, Fragapati distributed the minor offices of the float, to which gods and goddesses, who most exalted states, were the extreme opposite. That the great journey through Etheria be the transverse of all serious people, of all serious purpose. And thus they started on their course, amidst the applause of thousands of millions of Etherians, on their mirthful cruise in furtherance of Jehovah's will, speeding swiftly across the swamps of Ul, where 7 corporeal stars were dismembered 1,000 million years ago, now set with Aegean fields and forming nebula, whereto they bring at times the drudges, the spirits of darkness, the dark spirits of other worlds, that they may take on the semblance of corporeal forms to complete their neglected good works in times past. The ship rose freely and then shot in the pastures of Z, where Lepsa, god of the corporeal star, Tisa, 400 years, fetteth 70 million Essayans, newborn spirits, colonizing them to truth and good works. Lepsa knew the float was coming, and so had called 1,000 million spectators to look on, knowing they desired to see great Fragapati, and they sang and blew their trumpets, rejoicing, to which the gods and goddesses of the float cast out myriads of Archean flowers and sweet perfumes, mementos of love. Now all this is going on in the spirit world, where most religious believers, biblical Quranic believers, don't even have a clue of the vastness of events like this going on in the spirit world. And here OAHSPE talk about these things like it's an everyday thing. Verse 12. To Eve Ul, now the ship made way, where 7 Etherian worlds bordered in the ark of Nu, pastures of Elim, god of Osin, where congregated another host of 2,000 millions, to see them pass, cheering with singing, and with trumpets, and stringed instruments. And to this god, Elim, Fragapati caused the banners of the float to sail on the sign, Jehovah's name, being friends for 90,000 years. Look at that. And Elim answered him with the 1,000,000 posts of light amidst the waving of innumerable banners. So as they traveling in the roadways of the heavens, in their travel, this is what's going on. They're passing by friends. Yo, what's up, son? I ain't seen you in 90,000 years. Everything good? All right, let me move on. That's what's going on here. Showing you the vastness of the Creator. Verse 13. Onward moved the float, the fire ship, with its 10 million joyous souls, now nearing the borders of Horeb, the boundary of Fragapati's honored regions, known for hundreds of thousands of years, and for his work on many worlds. Here reaching Sevorkum, the roadway of the solar phalanx, near the pulse of Dan. Dan is a subcycle of 400 years. Wherewith quartered 500 million Etherians on a voyage of exploration of more than 4 million years. Here, reaching Sevorkum, the roadway of the solar phalanx, near the pulse of Dan. Dan is a period of 400 years, a subcycle. Where were quartered 500 million Etherians on a voyage of exploration of more than 4 million years, rich stored with the glories of great Jehovah's universe. Now look at that. These particular Etherians are on a 4 million year voyage. When we talk about time and the magnitude of things, there's no comparison in any other book that can reveal how timeless creation really is and still being subjected to time. Now, there, Koalo, their ship was almost like a world, so vast and stored with all opportunities, they talked of going home. Their pilots had coursed the firmament since long before the earth was made. Imagine that. They're talking about Etherians coursing and piloting through an excursion, a voyage that they started before the earth was. That's what this verse is saying. Their pilots had coursed the firmament since long before the earth was made, and knew more than 1,000,000 of roadways in the Etherian worlds, and were best to travel to witness grandest contrasting scenes. Well, these angels started out just like us as corporeal beings, confined to a corporeal world before graduating off that planet into the universities, cities in the universe, and transversing the universe. So we're going to be doing the same things eons from now. Now, verse 14. By their invitation, Frank and Petty halted here a while, and the hosts interchanged their love and discourse on their purpose, rejoicing in the glories of Jehovah's everlasting kingdoms. And though they had lived so long and seen so much, everyone had a new and wondrous works to tell of. For so great is the inventive power of the Great Spirit that never twice alike will one find the scene in the Etherian worlds, radiant, differently, moving in an everlasting change, as if each one were to outdo the former in beauty and magnificence. So here it's saying that these angels been alive so long, millions of years, and have not got bored with the scenery and the sight. It's still as if it was brand new. So that's to show you the vastness of the Creator's creation, that nothing alike resembles. Everything is anew. And even if you look at our solar system, each planet is unique in its own right. Nothing is the same. The Earth is not Mars, and the Mars don't look like Earth. Jupiter don't look like Saturn. Saturn don't look like Neptune, and so on. Each unique in its own right. Nothing resembling another. Now, verse 15. And then again they sped onward, now richly stored with the stirred wonders they had just heard from strange travelers. Presently, now, the floater near the borders of Shinvat, the Earth's vortex, just beyond the orbit of the moon. Here Frank and Petty halted for a day, sending swift messengers down to the lower heavens and to the earth to resolve where he should anchor during dawn. Dawn is the beginning of the arc cycle, the beginning of the 3,000-year period. So here again, you can see through these verses that in the OAHSPE, it talks about the heavenly roadways, no different than we would talk about going in our car and traveling on the freeways and highways. Everything is system and order in OAHSPE, not scattered and unorganized. And with that, I'd like to say peace and blessings. Shalom.